Hey, what's up, guys? If you've been following me for a while, you know I'm a huge fan and supporter of Firecracker Farm. Alex, the owner, is not only an incredible human being, but he makes an incredible product. And that is why we could not be happier that they are sponsoring the Shoot Me Straight podcast. Each guest, when they come in, will get a sample of Firecracker Farm so they can take it back and enjoy. And I can tell you, to each person that we've given it to, they have not been disappointed. You can put these, put this salt on your favorite food, favorite beverage. I've even seen people put it in their coffee. They love it. There's an assortment of heat, so if you don't like it too hot, they definitely have that taken care of with some mild flavors. And then it goes all the way to extreme heat if you like to sweat. So if you guys are interested in purchasing some, go to firecracker.farm. All right, thank you for listening, and God bless. Welcome back to Shoot Me Straight with Eddie and Dave, who is not with us today. He had a business call he had to jump on at the last second. But today we have a awesome guest, Terry the Trailer Wilson. Trailer Wilson. All right, we'll get into how you got that nickname for sure. You're a retired Green Beret, recently retired.
Recently, yep. Right about 1 year right now.
Yeah, we were just having a discussion. Yeah, you're still dusting off the or brushing off the dust.
Yep.
Yeah. And we'll get into that, man, how that's going and everything. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't even know you were local. So you're over in Niceville.
Yeah, I'm over in Niceville. I retired at a 7th group there.
Nice.
So we stayed here. We have a couple brick and mortar businesses here, and then our kids were old, and we're kind of like set in the place. And it's Destin, Florida.
Exactly. It's like, dude, I'm not moving away from here anytime
Exactly.
soon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm glad that you made it out here to be on the podcast, and I dove into your story a little bit. I don't like getting into it too much, just because I like having it's like a clean slate. But I definitely know that you have been through a whirlwind, man. So we'll get into that too as we go along. But I think for the listeners, we always just start off with who you are, where you were born, and then we'll go from there.
Yep. So I was born in St. Louis, Missouri. Kind of moved around quite a little bit. My mother and father pretty much had like a shotgun wedding, young kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know how that goes in the Midwest. And they were divorced pretty young, had a pretty tumultuous kind of childhood there. Moved around quite a little bit. I would say if I was in a location maybe more than a year, year and a half, 2 years, that was pretty long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we moved around quite a little bit. So.
Did you guys stay in the Midwest area?
Yeah, we stayed right there, St. Louis, St. Charles, the rural area there in Missouri. So, but it's right there within 100 miles or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
How was that growing up?
I don't know, man. When you're a kid, you don't know any different, really. So when I was really young, I would say toddler age, before they got divorced, I remember there's certain things you can remember your childhood, but we moved from like place to place, and then we lived in like almost like I don't can really explain it. It's not like a trailer park, but it was almost like an RV. Like,
okay.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, like an RV park, like where you had like your house was on wheels and you could just move it from location to location. So I remember living in there and then moving around quite a little bit, and then from there they got divorced. When they got divorced, he was around there for a little bit, but he was back and forth to Colorado. So he lived in Colorado there for a while. Yeah.
What do you do for work?
He was a trash man his pretty much whole life.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. So my grandfather actually started Wilson and Refuge Company in St. Louis there. So, and they got pretty big, and they ended up selling it to Waste Management. So they've been in that trade for like some time, And then they moved another company to Colorado and started one up over there. So yeah, he's been in that industry like his whole life. He even had me on the back of it. I was talking about that. I actually went and lived with him for a summer. I'd go back and forth. And when I stayed with him during the summers, man, I'm talking about anywhere from 10 to 12, you know what I mean? Like 12 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
He'd have me on the back of a trash truck hauling trash.
I bet that was pretty awesome, though, when you were little.
Whenever you're young, it's like, oh, man, it sucked because you're up at like, whatever, 3:30 in the morning, 2:30, whatever that time, he gets his trash route done. But I will tell you, the discipline that like you had to have at 10 years old to do that, and he had you in the back of the trash truck, like you take that with you a long ways.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was pretty cool there. So
Yeah, man, you're riding around the back of a dump truck. Yeah. Or a garbage truck.
Yeah.
How about your mom?
My mother, I really don't stay much in contact with her. I live with her throughout majority of my life. I live with my grandparents a little bit also. She had dealt with alcohol and addiction problems, you know. So she was in better terms. I try not to beat them up because I kind of see where they're at that point. You know, at some point you just got to let it go.
Yeah.
You know, but it was rough. Like I lost track of how many times she had been married. You know what I mean? So she's probably married over 5 times. Like, so as a kid, she's, with my father, then another guy, then another guy, then another guy, and you're just like.
And were you having to live with each of those?
And you have to leave
guys?
with you know what I mean? So it's like, so that obviously comes with its own set of problems, you know, especially as a kid, because you're trying to look for a father figure, and you got this guy. Oh, now he's out of the picture. Now you got this guy. That guy's out of the picture. You're like, at some point, you're just like.
Yeah, you can't imagine.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, and then that she suffered, like I said, she suffered from her own alcohol issues and addiction and that stuff there too. And then the flood of '93 came. This was in Missouri, and it flooded. We lived in a trailer park at that point. Flooded out the trailer, and then we were homeless for some time and moved from like.
Oh shit.
Yeah, from living in a tent to in homeless shelters to like living out of a vehicle. It was a shit show.
Rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
Were you going to school this whole time while you guys were like homeless?
Yeah, I still remember going to school. I mean, off and on. Now there were we moved so much. The biggest thing I think when school was the issue is because we moved so much that there'd be certain curriculums that you wouldn't get. Right? Because you're going to this school, they've already done Algebra 1. So now you go to another school, well, they've already done that throughout half the year or whatever. So, I remember being a kid just, being behind, a lot. So, where you get to some curriculum and be like, man, I'm way behind because these kids already know what they're, this curriculum, and I don't. So, I gotta try to catch up on it.
And that affects you, too.
Oh, yeah, of course it affects you.
Yeah, I can relate a little bit to that. I mean, I grew up an Army brat, so we moved around every 2 years, and that was the same thing. I'd go to a different school, and then I'm playing catch up because this last school didn't have the same curriculum or the same standards. Yeah.
It's like you're always behind the power curve.
Yep.
Right, and you're always trying to play catch up on everything.
Yeah, but I think that's if directed right, it can be a good thing because you are constantly struggling and you're not quitting. You're constantly trying to keep up, which builds resilience.
Yeah. And then I think it builds a lot of things. It builds some resilience, and you're constantly, like you said, you're constantly trying to catch up with everybody. And then on top of that, if you do perform well, it almost gives you this perspective of, I don't know. Sometimes there's some positives and negatives on there. I did very well at things, so sometimes I wait till the last minute to do it because I was still doing better than everybody else.
Oh yeah.
So that
procrastination.
Procrastination. And I'm like, hold on. If I wait to do it, I do great. But then, so now I need to.
I still do that.
Man, to this day, there's a time
packing for trips doesn't matter. It's like, why do it right now when I can do it in an hour?
Yeah,
right
exactly,
before.
Yeah. There's things that I struggle with that. There's things that I'm like, nope. I'm planning it. I'm very very tedious on, right. But then when you're around your peers and you see you're being successful, and you've already procrastinated, it almost kind of forces you to.
Yeah.
You're
like, I got this.
I got this. Yeah. I don't think people understand that. I mean, that's pretty relevant in the soft community.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I think, dude, if the amount of attributes that are common amongst all the whole special operations community is pretty astounding when it comes to, like, my wife is like deep diving into ADHD and like all these attributes that come with it, and she sends me all these notes like, look at this, look at, and I'm like, yep, that's me, that's me, and it's all of us. Yeah.
So I think the ADHD is like a learned behavior in there somehow.
Yes. Well, it's learned through, from what I'm gathering, it's learned through childhood events, right? You build up these defense mechanisms no matter what you're going through. Like, for instance, what you were just talking about is constantly switching schools, having to play catch up. you'll develop some form of ADHD in that manner, just because you're not focused on one thing.
Yeah.
You're all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense.
That's my medical.
No, I think you're right too, because I think in soft there too, because you're transitioning for so many things. You're just not just one thing.
No,
You're
and
back
that's why
forth
it's
all kinds of-
perfect. It's a perfect job for us. It's I think most guys have it when you get in there because, like you said, you don't have one job to focus on. So you have to take care of multiple things, and you have to be a good multitasker. Where I think dudes with ADD or ADHD, once you set them on a path where they're like, yes, this is what I want, this is what I believe in, then they're able to multitask like crazy. It's when you put them in a situation where it's like, I don't want to do this, and then it's like, I'm not going to do it.
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, if they don't have a good why or purpose behind it, they're not.
Good luck getting them to
Good
do
luck
anything.
in be successful. When I was a first sergeant, First Special Forces Command, that was when I got a new 18 series guys in there. All the 18 series, I made sure they came through there, and I'm like, hey, have you met Fuck It yet? Like, are you still like performing, or are you done? Right? Because once you get them over there, it's usually the end of their career. Right? They're
I
at 17 years or so, right? And you're just like
They're terminal.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like.
They're like, I hit fuck it a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like asking them, do I know where they're at? I'm like, how much work am I actually going to get out of you?
Yeah. Let's be honest.
Let's
here.
be honest
Yeah.
here, man. So, because I know you don't want to be here.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
You're not on the teams where I know that where you want to be, but.
So did you play sports through high school at all?
So I was actually good at sports, so I did some track and field. But we didn't have any money, so I didn't have I couldn't afford equipment, or did I have parents that would have the opportunity at that time where they were going to drive me anywhere to go to activities, right? So I was pretty much like sports, even if I wanted to, it was something. So I actually played a lot of street ball and like in the neighborhood back there in the 80s. That was just something that you would just play, almost kind of like you watching Sandlot. You get a street game playing football or baseball or whatever.
Which those are the roughest games.
Those are the roughest games, you know what I mean? And it was a blast, and I do that almost probably multiple times throughout the week. I mean, that was just something you kind of lived up and do that, ride bikes, but no organized sports really in schools or anything like that. So
okay. And then you graduated on time?
Nope.
Nice.
No, didn't graduate. So at about, I would say 16, I guess, just right around that time. I think I might have went a little bit longer than that. I ended up, I got out of school and then started working. As soon as I was old enough to work, I got out of school and started working to help pay bills.
Where'd you get your first job at?
Man, where did I get my first job at? I think it was a fast food place. I went from job to job to job when I was a teenager.
So when you're 16 like that, when you're like, hey, I'm going to apply for jobs, the people that are hiring you, they like, hey, are you going to finish high school or what?
So at that point, I don't remember them even asking.
Yeah.
I don't think they even cared. As long as you were there to work and you did your job, I don't remember even, there was even an issue.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, you already went through, so your mom was probably in and out of whatever.
Yeah.
And was your dad like, hey?
So he at that point, he lived in Colorado, right? And then he kind of came back into my life probably around, when they divorced, when I was a toddler or whatever. He came back in my life around the preteen time frames, you know what I mean? And then, I spent some summers with them, and then kind of got to my teenage years, and then, I was kind of off, and he was still in Colorado, so it really didn't work out to where.
I got you.
You know what I mean? He had a whole lot of influence.
Yeah.
There, So my grandfather actually stayed with him a little bit. He was a pipe hitter. He was in Korean War, and he had worked a whole bunch of different jobs, or he worked his own business. He was an auctioneer.
Really?
Yeah, he sold cars. He was kind of jack of all trades, just to kind of make money. He was the poor man's entrepreneur. I would say. You know what I mean?
Blue-collar
The blue-collar entrepreneur.
Hey,
yeah.
Those are the best.
Yeah. He had right before he passed, he had a thrift store in his garage, and so he'd have yard sales every week, and that's how he paid all of his bills. And so he would take me to go yard sailing from in like around the different neighborhoods, you know, when there's a yard sale,
Mm-hmm.
and he would buy stuff and then we'd resell it in his thrift store, right? And then that's how he would pay the bills, man.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's different times back then.
Totally different times, man. You know, but he came from that point to where it's like, hey, this was enough. This is what, you know what I mean? And he just made it happen for where he was at, what he did, you know,
Yeah.
so.
He made enough to.
Yeah.
It's like I don't need anything more than this.
I don't need anything more than
Yeah.
that. And I think that was kind of his thought process. He owned a motorcycle shop. He had a brick and mortar motorcycle shop where he built motorcycles at one point. Whenever that, he bought his own truck and drove a truck across like state lines for some time.
Yeah.
So he was like always into like one thing to the next. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he was.
So he had a pretty. You would say he had a good influence on.
Yeah,
your
I'd
life?
say he had a really good influence also. He was a no nonsense kind of guy too.
Yeah.
So I related to that as those are the kind of guys you need sometimes with my mindset.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the same with me as well. It's, don't give me any avenues to go do something else because I will.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you worked all through 16 and up.
Yeah, I've worked pretty much as soon as I was able to get a job. I've been working, doing something like since then.
And then did you eventually when did you go into the Army?
So I went to the Army. So I met my wife. We were young, right? Probably around the same time frame, 15, 16 years old. And then she's pregnant.
Oh, okay.
Right? And then we get pregnant with Courtney. This is my second daughter. We still ain't married yet, right? And I was under like 18, 19 years old, you know?
Wow.
And I'm like, all right, we got to do something. We end up buying a house. The house was not, it was like $18,000 for the house. It was a total shithole. You know what I mean? It was plaster walls. The ground was like not really ground. It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was something, right, for us. And then from there, I'm like, all right, I got to do something. So I was working, you know, different jobs. And I wanted to get my kids out of that kind of environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I'm like, all right, I got to do something else. So I went to go see some recruiters. So the recruiting station was, you know, I don't remember.
What year was this? I'm sorry.
This was, let's see. I was right at like 19 years old. I was born in 79, so.
Oh, we're the same age, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what year was that? 99, somewhere around there?
99.
Yeah,
so we
somewhere
joined.
around
I joined in 99 as well.
Probably around the same time. I did the delayed entry program.
Okay.
So you go to I don't remember how the recruiting station was. The recruiting station at that point was it was everybody there. It was Army,
Yep.
Marine Corps, Navy. I
Like
don't know if
on a
they still
little
do that.
corner?
Yeah, it had a little
Yeah.
corner, right? And then there's everyone there. So I showed up, have no clue about the military really. And I'm like, who's open today? The Army was open. So I go in, go in there and talk to the Army recruiter. And so I'm talking to him for a while. And obviously, you know, from there, decided to join the Army. And they're like, hey, you don't have a high school diploma. Hey, bud, you got to get a GED. So they're the one that actually helped me get a GED and an ASVAB.
Okay. Did you do that at night school or anything?
Yeah, so they gave me the book. So truthfully, through elementary school, man, I got all straight A's actually through elementary. It wasn't until I hit adolescence to where I was like, I kind of was like,
Yeah.
books, I don't need this stuff. You know what I mean? I just didn't really apply it myself. So they gave me they're like, hey, you need to go get these two books. So I went and I got those books and then checked them out from the library. And then I just studied on my own and then just went and took the test.
Okay.
So I didn't do any like night schooling or anything.
I got my G, so I went to night school.
To night school
afterwards.
Yeah. I don't know if that was a requirement or something that was available and I just didn't know about it or whatever. But
yeah, I was just wondering. I'm
Yeah.
sure each place has its own program on how to get your GED. Mine
Yeah.
was you have to go to this night school 2 times a week or
Okay.
2 or 3. Yeah.
yeah, so I did that and then I had a date and then I went and took the test, got the GED, and then after I got the GED, then I think they had me take the ASVAB.
How'd you do on the ASVAB?
Good. So I scored high enough to where on the ASVAB and the GT score, like to go SF, like
Yeah.
you have to have over a 110 or higher without a waiver. So I got higher than that, but I don't remember what like how high
Yeah.
it was. It was enough I could get in there without a waiver. So I'm like, that's good for me.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is, I mean, I went and took mine,
Yeah.
and I completely just blew it out my ass. I was like, I don't care about whatever,
Yeah.
abacadabra all the way down. And then I had scored low in the mechanical portion because I
Okay.
wanted to go to be a SEAL. I was like, that's what I want to do. And they're like, you didn't score high enough. So I had to retake it like a year later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, luckily for me, I was already studying for the GED, so I already had like the study mindset going. So then once I studied for the GED, then I just got right into the ASVAB. So yeah, if I wouldn't have done that, I probably would have been in the same ballpark, hard telling.
Yeah, which they don't. It's not like they don't explain that to you beforehand either. Like, listen, dude, how you score on this is depending on where your job. But they're just like, here you go, like, take this. At least with me, so I didn't take it seriously.
That was the one thing like I don't understand when people are given a block of instructions and stuff. Like most people, if you give them a why they need to do something before they're doing it, you're gonna get a way better product out of it. Because at the end of the day, you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, if I don't know why I'm doing this, then I don't
What's
care.
the point? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as an instructor, that was my big thing, man. I always try to give the students a why so they understood, and you get a way better product, even in leadership positions.
Oh yeah.
Way better product.
Yeah, I think the military. It depends on where you're at, but I mean, I think with special operations in general, you are given the why most of the time. Like, hey, this is why we're doing this. You know, this is the amount of work that we need to get to accomplish this why.
Yep.
Whereas in conventional units, because I was with the Marines, the grunts for 4 years,
Yep.
you're just like told, go do this, and there's no why behind it.
Yep.
It's just you're going to accomplish whatever you're being told.
Yeah. Yeah, the first general rule, I think, as a leader is you give the guys a why, and then after that, you give them buy-in. So the why will give a good product, but if you give them buy-in, forget about it. They'll crush it, especially in the soft community. You give those guys buy-in.
Oh, yeah. They'll get it done.
They'll get it done.
Did you, so you obviously scored high enough to go SF. Was that like something that was like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
So before I joined the Army, I really didn't know much about the military at all.
Yeah.
My goal was to go to the military. This was before 9/11, right? So I'm like, I really didn't look at it like that. I was just like, I wanted to join the military. I didn't even know exactly what I wanted to do.
You're just looking for a way out.
I was looking for a way out. I was looking for something better for my kids.
Yeah.
You know? And then when I actually went to the MEP station and they're like, hey, what job? They gave me opportunities for a couple different jobs. The first one was underwater welding, which I didn't even know that was a job, right? And I'm like, really? I'm like, and at this point, I was more like an adrenaline junkie.
You're a boy.
I was a boy. You know what I mean? I
like,
want to
let's
get
go.
after it, right?
Yeah.
So like, so I'm like, I can't get after it as an underwater welder. You know what I mean? Like, there's who's going to shoot at me there, right? So that's kind of my thought process was. And then they offered me the commo guy, right? The guy with, and the only thing I know about the commo guy is, well, he's the first guy that gets killed in the war movies.
Yeah.
Like,
I've seen Platoon.
I've seen Platoon. I've seen Full Metal. Yeah, I've seen this. You know what I mean? I'm like, I ain't trying to be that guy, right? He's the first one to go. Him and the guy that does the flamethrower. You gonna give me that one next? Yeah. So,
although while he's alive, that's probably one of the most badass jobs.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. You like think about it, you'd be like, 2 minutes of glory and fun
people?
for that? Maybe. All right, maybe. So those are the two opportunities that I had, and then those are the two that I remember. And at that point, like this is pre 9/11, and like I kind of wanted to get after it, and I was like, I'm thinking, well, what about MP? You got MP available? And they're like, no, it's not available. So I actually left the MEP station, and I'm like, all right, it's fine. And I started leaving, and then my recruiter calls me, and he's like, hey, if you sign for this right now, will you take it? Right? This is before I even left. I don't even think I left the door yet, because it was like the big building in St. Louis, so I had to like go downstairs to try to leave out. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I turned around, they gave it to me. And that was my initial entry, was MP. I didn't even learn about what really Green Berets were until I went to Iraq. And when
As
I got
an MP?
As an MP. When I got there, we were like in the flot, like behind the flot, like kind of in the rear with the gear. Not really not, we had the ID threat, but we weren't getting after it, And I seen those dudes, and I'm like, those dudes are like doing their own thing.
So were you, as an MP, were you like just guarding the gates over there in Iraq?
So no, so we're actually doing like operations. But when we went to Iraq after September 11th hit, and we went to when we went to Iraq, it was we went with almost through with the initial invasion, but the infantry and everybody was ahead of us. So they had the forward line of troops, and we were behind them, right? So we didn't. So it was still like a ghost town in Baghdad as we were kind of clearing through.
Yeah, you're bringing up the rear.
I'm bringing up the rear with the gear, right? So all the combat operations, all we're seeing is all the souls that they left behind as we're kind of going through, right?
Gotcha.
You know, so we really wasn't, we were doing, convoy security kind of stuff like that. You know, the IED threat was like starting to pick up, but this was in the initial portions of part of the war, So when I seen the ODAs and like they were kind of doing their own thing and they were actually going out getting after it and then coming back to the fire base refitting or whatever, I'm like, that's what I want to do that.
Yeah. Plus everybody had like their beards, long hair.
Exactly.
Like, how do I get there?
How do I get there? Right. Because I felt I was too restricted. And then at that point, call it what I want. But if I'm going to go to combat, I want to be with the best. Right. Yep. So who are the best guys that I know of that I can get with? Well, those are the guys to do it. Right. So, so I'm like, that's whenever I was like, all right.
Yeah. So then from there, you put in your
request. So then when I come back and then I seen I'm not sure how they do it there. You have a SF recruiter you have to go to. So even though you're already active duty.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have to go to an SF recruiter. An SF recruiter there will show you, okay, hey, this is what I need to do. They gave me a little book for train up. You know what I mean? And they're like, they gave me a little study book. They gave me a training book. Like, this is like the PT you need to do. And then they helped me get a date on whenever I can go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, they didn't do that. Well, so I almost did the same thing where I went with the Marines, but I wanted to be a SEAL the whole time. And then I kept taking the screener over and over and over, and I was passing it each and every time. But they were like, "You owe your time here. Like, you can't go until your 4 years is up." But there was no, as far as like filling out a request sheet or going through somebody, like, you're on your own. It's like, there was no like. Mentor to be like, hey, this is what you should be doing. It was sort of like you did all your research on your own, trying to figure it out. But I'm sure that was about where I was at. Maybe it might have been different at different locations.
Yeah, I think I kind of for that one there. So you don't have like the X-ray program. So they give you the book and everything. At least it's a foot in the door, I would say, with the SF recruiter, because they're telling you something. Now, obviously, it's as good as the questions that you're asking. But it's an SF recruiter. He wants you to go to selection, so he wants to see you succeed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's some plus there, too. So I don't feel like I was just out there flapping.
No, and any knowledge you can get back, like, especially when that's what you want, it's like you soak it up like nobody's business.
Yeah, there's no internet there to like, hey, what do I need to do to be a Green Beret?
Yeah.
That shit didn't exist. You know what I mean? And you're just like, well, what do I do? How do I do this, And they used to have signs by like the gym. So you go to the gym and they'd be like, hey, you want to become a Green Beret, but this is an SF recruiter. So you seen the sign, you'd be like, oh,
that's awesome.
yeah. So like, oh, this is the number. So this is how you contact that number. You go back in your landline phone.
Yeah, that's right.
And call.
Set up a meeting.
Face
to face.
And then it'd be like, hey, where do I need to go? And then you pull out your map and then you you go to where it was at.
Oh, time.
You went past Walmart, you went too far.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Or went past Kmart, you went too far, you gotta go back.
Yeah, I think and then the other half of that is like the intel that you can get when you're trying to go comes from people you should not be taking it from, which is quitters. And they're like, oh, let me tell you what it's gonna be like. I don't know how many guys that I ran into that quit buds that had more information that they wanted to tell me. And half of it is like, it's garbage, because it's like, dude, why am I listening to you? You didn't make it through.
So
but when you're that young, I sat there and listened to them like, okay, and you're taking it all in.
And that's one thing that I talk to or say about now is like, I put selection on such a high pedestal before I went that when I got there, not that it wasn't tough, but I thought it was unattainable tough.
Yeah, same.
I was like, nobody can pass this, right? And then you get there, day one, people are quitting. It rains, people are quitting. And I'm like, we haven't even started yet, and people are quitting.
Yep.
And I'm like, and it was just a realization to where it's like,
you want to know what my thought process is on that, and even still to this day, because both, Green Beret, SEALs, every special operations has its standard, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, it's like when they talk about women going into, hey, as long as they meet the standard, But the reality is this: the standard is not the standard. The standard is the lowest standard that you can achieve. You should be setting your own standard when you try out for whatever Green Beret selection or buds or whatever it's. And I like what you just said. You had in your mind made it so unattainable that you probably crushed yourself on a daily basis, like trying to attain that, right? And so by the time you got there, you're like, yeah, it's hard, but I've set the bar so high for myself that this is not as hard as it would be. And that's how buds was for me. It was, I had like, oh, I knew, okay, we got to do 4 mile time runs. Sweet, I'm going to do 6 mile time runs on my own. And then I just would double everything. So that way, when it was time to get there, it was like, this is nothing to me. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem with guys that quit, like you said right away. They show up because in their mind, they're like, oh, I've met the standard. It's 6 pull-ups to get in here. It's like, dude, that's not like, that is the lowest common, or lowest number that you can get. But since you did not try to go above that, then yeah, this is going to be like unattainable for you.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what separates the guys that make it and don't.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, for sure.
So you put in the request sheet, went to Green Beret selection. So that was after your first deployment.
Yeah, I deployed once in the conventional army. Well, actually, I deployed twice, but one was to Honduras. Well, no, I'm wrong. So I deployed to. Man, I think I almost deployed 4. So I deployed to Qatar twice, Iraq once, and Honduras. And I'd only been in the conventional army like 4 years.
Oh, dang.
About 4 years. Because I went to selection in 2004, and I got to my unit. I signed into my unit September 11th of 2000, 1 year before the towers. Like on the date.
On the date
before 1 year before the towers hit.
Okay.
So like I remember that. There's certain dates I remember. That.
Yeah,
one,
of course. Everybody remembers where they were.
Yeah. So I signed in 1 year before. And then I went to selection in October of 2004. I remember that one very clearly because I'm from St. Louis. The Cardinals were in the World Series and they got crushed by the Red Sox. That year, the only time they won a World Series like since they traded Babe Ruth. So I remember that. And the elections were going on too.
That's right. Time. Yeah, because I went to Buds in 2004 as well. Yeah.
So yep. So did that.
How was selection for you? I mean,
selection. So I would say for me, the tough parts were like team week was pretty tough. The rucks. So the rucks and the runs were unknown. So like before then, we didn't know exactly how long it was. Like there was like this kind of what you said before. Like the guys that hadn't made it through selection would tell you, oh, you got this run, but you didn't know exactly how long the runs were or whatever. And most of the runs were like obviously through like uneven terrain, right? So you're running in sand, some of it you're running on a road,
Yeah.
So you have to run in those conditions to get good at those conditions,
Yeah, toughen the feet up.
Toughen the feet up in that. So the rucks I did really, really well in. Like top 5 guys in the rucks. Runs, I was middle of the pack. Was never like a great runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hard one I would say for me was team week was pretty tough. The log PT, like they smoked the shit out of you on the log PT.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that one was a gut check. And then land nav when they did the star course, I crushed it all through the train up, and they pair you with another guy. So they take one student that was doing very good and one student that was doing not so good, and they pair you up.
Yeah.
So I was the one student that did good, and they paired me up with another one. And then for like the last like exercise you do before you actually do the star course, where they kind of grade you, and then I did day 1 in the star course, and boloed like crazy. Like I got like maybe 1 or 2 points, right? Mm-hmm. So when they do the star course, it's a land navigation to where they call it a star because.
So 5 points?
Yeah, it's like 5 points, right?
Yeah.
And normally the points, you usually have, if you look at it like a star, you have like usually you have 2 to 3 long ones and then 2 short ones, distance, And the one point that I had, I think I got to the second point, and it was in between 2 draws in Camp McCall, North Carolina. And I couldn't find it for nothing, right? So because of that, I had to give all of my points on the next 2 days, like no discrepancies, or I would be out of the selection, right? So like now I'm like blade running, like there's no room for error after this one, you know what I mean? So like boloed the first day. The second day I went in there, got 5 for 5 points, plenty of time to spare, like crushed it. The third day I'm like down to, I hit 4 points, and my fourth point I had like 3 long range movements already, like 10 clicks or more, like 8 to 12 clicks or whatever, and I had I had 1 left, and I only had 1 short range. So I'm like, this last one's going to be a short one. Like, there's no way. It's got to be a short range movement, right?
Yeah.
It was 12 clicks away from the other side of Camp McCall. I had like less than right at 60 minutes to get there. And anybody that's moved like with, your ruck and that your weight, and then you're a map and compass and protractor, like that far away, and try to do a pace count, like it's almost unattainable. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, so I plotted it, and I'm like, then rechecked it, because I'm like, well, maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe so I replotted.
I hope I'm wrong.
I hope I'm wrong. I replotted it, and I'm like, nope, I'm not wrong. It was down on Power Range Road in Camp McCall, which was good because it was an actual, like, known location on the map.
Yeah.
So that was the one plus that I had. So I just dumped all my water and just started running 12 clicks away. You know what I mean? Just started running. And once I got to my backstop, right, and I found Power Range Road, then I went and I did. They teach you something there in selection, which is called intersection resection, to where you look. Yeah, you look at
2 terrain features.
Yep. Yes.
Have them intersect.
Yeah, have them intersect, and then you're like, okay, this is where I think I am on the map. This is where I'm actually standing in real life, right? Now I need to figure out if where I'm standing in real life is what I think is on the map. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much what it is, right? So for like the people listening. So I did that, and I'm like, and I confirmed, or at least I thought I confirmed, because you never know until like there's something to like, I'm like, okay, this is where I think I am. And then I started going into doing like a recon of where my point was. So I go in there, I start clover leafing, and I'm like, I'm down to like minutes left. And I'm like, now I'm getting nervous, and I'm already smoked.
Yeah.
So this isn't me just like, oh, just nonchalantly.
No,
I'm
you're drained.
Sweating, I'm drained, I'm dehydrated, my mouth is dry because I dumped all my water, because I'm like, I'm trying to get rid of as much weight as I possibly could. And now I'm like bent over, I'm like feeling sorry for myself. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Caden, my youngest son, my wife was pregnant with him. She has him in November, and now I'm thinking, am I going to stay in selection if I don't make it? Like, because I'll just say, hey, just roll me over again.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm like, I'm not going back home as a failure. Well, you know what I mean? Like, these are the things that are going through your mind.
As a man,
as a man, you're thinking like all this stuff. Like, you know what I mean?
Start beating yourself up.
Start beating myself up. It's not even over yet, right? And I'm like bending over, and then I hear the tailgate of one of the trucks close. I look over, and my point's right there. So I run over there, give him my card, and he's like, man, you just barely made it. So I'm just like, good call. Got in the truck, and then that was my close call in selection. Yeah.
What's cool, like, so with you guys and your selection course, is you can literally just be DQ'd. Like, they can come up and be like, hey, you're done.
Yep.
Like, without you quitting. It's just, is that on a peer-to-peer evaluation?
So whenever they do the selection course, is a cat. I don't remember any categories, at least during selection. Not that it doesn't happen. They can disqualify you, but they normally let you get through the whole selection process. But at the end, just because you make it to the end doesn't mean you're going to get selected.
Yeah.
So if your peers are shitty, like guys are like, hey, this guy's got key character flaws. This guy didn't help with team week. This guy is sandbagging. You know what I mean? This guy's toxic, whatever it is, you know. Then they look at all that. You can be DQ'd from that. You can be DQ'd from the psych test. You can be DQ'd for not hitting the standards on whatever, how many pull-ups or doing the obstacle course.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff.
Physical requirements.
Physical requirements. You can be DQ'd from that. And there's a couple different DQs at that point they had. It was a, disqualified, but you're invited to come back, or an NTR, which is a never to return. So like, if depending on like how many times you've went through selection, or if there was just too many red flags there, then they can NTR you and be like, hey, you can never come back.
Yeah, I think that's one major difference between us and you, because there's no ability to do that really.
Really?
So yeah, because I was an instructor for a little bit. If like you have a student that's not doing well, like to give you an example, we had one. They showed up. Two students showed up late, like halfway through the day, and so we went to board them, and they completely lied. They were like, "Our car broke down, this and that." Little do they know that the roommates had already ratted on them and been like, "These guys are going to the strip clubs in Mexico." Which at first phase you're like, "What the hell are you thinking?" But they came back. They lied to us. We were like, the Master Chief. We were looking at him, waiting for him to be like, "You're done." And he's like, "All right, get back to class." And we're like, "Dude, what the hell?" And he's like, "They don't make it past this next evolution. Like, do you understand?" And so then that is like, then you're tortured until you quit. It's like that is the only way really to drive them out, because you can't. Yeah, I think you could pull and be like, "Hey, they lied," but then it would turn into this whole like back and forth, and then we'd have to give them a second chance, or whatever.
Gotcha.
And so instead of that, they're just like, make sure they don't
So
make it past this.
So no, you can be DQ'd like there at the end when they go through the board and selection, and then when you go to the Q course, you can be also, you get peered during the Q course also. So you could already make it through selection and go to the Q qualification course and go through MOS phase or Robin Sage or whatever, and then you're still peered during that time frame.
Yeah.
And if you're not passing stuff, your instructor, like I would, because I was an instructor at the weapons committee. So if I had a student that wasn't meeting the standards or whatever, I would just fill out, hey, this is what the student's done. These are the reasons why, and this is my recommendation for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And if I written that down as a instructor, even as a staff sergeant, it would have to go to the board. Now they could decide to push that student through and not listen to me, and a lot of instructors would get upset, so they wouldn't fill out these.
Yeah, like
things.
what's it matter?
What's the matter? I'm like, it's not my. And I also tell instructors, I said, it's not your job. My job is to let that board know that I don't believe under these circumstances that this student should move forward or this student should recycle. I'm not going to let them get through on my watch. If they okay it, that's on them. That's has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? And that's how I kind of ran it, and that's how I had when I was in charge of the tactics. That's how I had my instructors like.
That's very similar for us too when they go to SEAL qualification training. It's you can do that, but if they're not meeting the physical requirements, they're gone.
Yeah.
Like I think they're given 1 or 2 chances.
Yeah.
That's it. But the peer evals or the instructors, they can write
cool.
notes, and they sort of it follows them along to a team. So that way, when the chief gets them, he can look back at their notes and be like, okay, this guy has had issues here, here, and here.
So that's one thing that we don't do at the regiment in SF is you don't get anything from that student. Once you get your team, like we don't see anything he's done through the course.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then it was for a while, like they weren't trying to let packets go along with students there, right? Because they were afraid guys are going to get it and see things that they did from the past and then judge them on that before that. And you're like, well,
that's on the leader though. It's because even when I was a chief, I got a pass down. Yeah, and you're going to get some negatives, but at the same time, you're like, dude, I'm now in charge. We're starting off on a clean slate, but I do have I'm taking a mental note, and if I see a repeat pattern here, then that's on me as a leader to be like, okay, dude, but yeah, you can't start them off on a negative foot already, like especially if they've had problems in the past. It's like your job is to build them up.
Yes, and that's exactly it. I would say if you're a leader and you're promoting leaders who can't do that, then why are you promoting them? At the same token, if I've done a whole bunch of things wrong and there's a huge bunch of red flags, right? And now I'm coming to work for you. Should you not know those if you send them out on a TDY somewhere? Well, maybe that's not the guy that I go send on a singleton mission.
Yeah, maybe this guy's a liberty risk.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, why would you not pass some of that stuff on? Doesn't mean that like guy can't change, and then mean that guy shouldn't get another chance if you brought him here. But at the same token, like you're giving it to me as a leader to decide how to task my guys.
Yeah,
I need to know the good and the bad.
Yeah, I should have some background.
I should have some background on it. If not, you're setting everybody on the team and everybody else for failure.
Yeah. What we used to do back in the day is call like back to the schoolhouse and be like, what's up? Who because then you'd have all the chiefs calling there and trying to like rack and stack, like who's the number one guy in the class? We want him.
Yeah.
So
you get some of that stuff there too. You have guys figuring out exactly if there's a huge red flag on that.
Yeah.
Too. because everybody in the community, like, you know who the instructors are and everything there. Yeah,
Exactly.
Right? So the community's still small.
So you made it through all that. You checked into your first team. How was checking into your first team?
So when I got to so this is what I heard from like the students there. Obviously, they hadn't been there, or the guys that already got to group, whatever. They're like, hey, if you sign in early, right, then if the group CSM hasn't put you in on a battalion or yet, then you may be able to get on one you may be able to get to choose, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they did there. Like after you finish the Q course, you get like 30 days of leave and then 15 days of permissive TDY to help move your family, and then you get up to 30 days of leave. I didn't take any of that. Like I went from Fort Bragg from whenever I were done, and we were already there at the Q course. I got stationed at 7th Group. So I signed out from being a Green Beret, and I went straight to my unit. I was trying to get there before everybody else did. All the students that graduated that were staying there, So I got there, and then as I was signing in, they're like, "Hey, we don't have you on any battalion. Where you want to go?" And I was like, "Well, who's going to Afghanistan?
Who's going to war first?
Who's going to war first?
Send me there."
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, "That's where I want to go." So they sent me there, and then when I originally got there, they put me. They had already scheduled to go to PMT, so they already had their rosters filled. So I show up there, and they're like, "Hey, there's no room for you on none of these ODAs." So they put me on the B team. So now I'm just like, "Oh man, you got to kid me."
What's the B?
So the B team's like their support team. So the ODAs are a 12-man team, right? And they're the guys that are going out and doing combat operations. The B team there is there to support the ODAs.
Oh, so you're probably like, "Fuck."
Yes. Yeah, that's to say it lightly. Right. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, man." So they go to PMT. I'm with the B team during PMT. That's their pre-mission training.
Okay, pre-mission training.
Yeah, so since they're going out on combat operations or any kind of operations, when the teams deploy, we go to do some kind of training event.
Yeah.
To make sure the training event is for 2 different reasons. One is to verify that the teams, any last minute issues that are going on in the teams should be verified at that time. You know what I mean? Because they're kind of doing, training that is similar to what they may expect in combat or for whatever mission they're doing, right? So it gives the leadership one chance to look at the ODAs.
And they're graded, right?
Right? They're graded to kind of, even before they were graded, they're still graded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People are still looking at it like, oh, that team's squared away, or that team's jacked up, or that leadership needs to be changed out, or whatever. You know what I mean? So so they're doing that.
I have a question.
Yep.
And this is just, again, the differences and similarities between the two. So when you get to a platoon in the SEAL teams, right, you're in a platoon, you're in a task unit, which is usually 2 platoons, or it could be a super task unit, which is 3. But there's usually like 8 or 9 platoons per team. We go through a workup where so it'll be like a team comes back from deployment. The first 3 months we call professional development. They're going to schools or whatever. And then we call it ULT, unilateral training, which is each platoon from that team will go through the exact same workup. So you'll hit every block, like CQC, land warfare, diving, mobility, all this stuff. And it's about 7 months long. And you're being graded by other SEALs like that are in a training command. And then that is where it used to be, that's where they predetermine, like, hey, this platoon is squared away. They're locked on. Send them here to the best place.
Yep.
And then after workup, you have about, it sounds similar to what it's called individual training, SIT. But then that's where you're graded by the command. Like, okay, yes, and they bless you off, like, boom, and then you can go wherever your predetermined destination is. Is it similar, like, is your guys' training as you train up for a deployment, is it on your own, like, hey, we're going to go plan these trips on our own, or is it like we have it where all the trips are planned out for you, the training is planned out for you, and then you are graded by whatever's thrown at you?
Yes and no. So now it's a little bit more towards kind of what you're talking about, but back after September 11th, at least whenever I showed up, you came out of the Q course or wherever you were at, you went to an ODA, and it was catch up, so it was sink or swim.
Yeah.
Right? Because some of those guys could already been training for 3, 4, 5 years, and these guys are a solid team. You're showing up, or you better
catch up.
catch up. You know what I mean? Because they didn't have any individual training for you to go to. They expected after you get out of the Q course, you go to an ODA and you're ready to perform. And the team was there to train you up to where you needed to be, right? So we didn't have any of that pre-mission like preparation before then. So, so once I got to the unit, I went to the B team. So, and then after PMT, guys started falling off. So I went straight to a team after that. So before we went to Afghanistan, I did go to a team. But from there, they really had this guy's new that there's no time to evaluate.
It's OJT.
It's OJT, it's on the job training. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys sank and they would be kicked off the teams, or depending on what the team, the culture of that ODA was, because probably almost like the platoons, like every ODA inside of a cult. This is the thing about it, which is crazy. People don't understand about SOF, you know. In at least the conventional army, the culture is supposed to be in the battalion, which it does have a little bit of culture. But then you get down to the company, and the company almost has its own culture. Then you get down to the team, and the team has its own culture, you know. And depending on what team you go to and the leadership and some of the senior guys there will depend on, are you going to get OJT training, or are you going to show up and be like expected to
booted?
Yeah, exactly, booted. So So that's kind of how it was there.
Hey, what's up, guys? So when I'm not doing the podcast, I'm doing a lot of traveling. I put on training all over the country for LE and civilians. I also travel a lot for my nonprofit, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. And as you guys know, travel going back and forth can wear you down. But this past year, I have found the antidote. So let me put you on to Aquavita, Destin's premier IV therapy and oxygen bar. This place is owned and operated by a board-certified ER physician with over 23 years of experience, so you know your health is in good hands. Every IV drip is mixed to Board of Pharmacy standards and backed by CDC-level infection control. Whether you're dealing with a fatigue, a hangover, jet lag, stress, immunity issues, or even PMS, they've got custom vitamin drips and boosters tailored just for that. When you go inside, the place is pretty awesome. It puts you at ease right when you go in there. They have comfy lounge chairs, which are perfect for singles or couples, full group sessions. And you can even book the whole space for bachelor or bachelorette parties, race day recovery, or wellness events. While you're in there, they go the extra mile too. They'll give you blankets, sleep masks, earplugs, aromatherapy oxygen, all complimentary. And the best part, every visit includes direct care from the physician and experienced RNs, all focused on fast, safe, and affordable wellness. So if you're in the Destin area, hit up Aquavita. Your body will definitely thank you.
And then when we did our training on an ODA, you would go out individual training, and let's say I want to go, hey, we needed a guy who is sniper qualified. So they would send you to SODIC, which is, soft sniper. Or be like, okay, hey, we're on a dive team. You need to go to dive school. Or you're on a Halo team, you need to go to Halo school. Or I need you to do these technical schools, and that'd be individualized. And you go out, and each individual, I need you to do, whatever specialty training. So they would send you out and go to that school, and then you'd come back to the team.
To meet your platoon's manning requirements.
Yeah, to meet your requirements. Inside of that time frame, too, the ODA still had to run their training calendar to make sure that they were hitting all of their marks, whatever, depending on what operation they had coming up.
So all that's happening at the same time.
All that's happening at the same time, right? So it's almost kind of like this thing in SF. You could be playing catch up because you could be out going to a school, right? And you're trying to get the whole team into certain time frames, but sometimes you have an opportunity to the guy to go to school.
And you send them.
You send them, right? So because the op tempo was so high, you know what I mean? In 2007, 2000. So when I got to that company, just to kind of give you we went to Fob Rob, was in the Helmand province from 2007 to 2008.
Fob Robinson?
Yeah, Fob Robinson.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yep, 2007 to 2008. We went to, I got back, went to SODIC, came back, went back to Fob Robinson from 2008 to 2009. So.
I'm wondering if we were there at the same time. I was there in 2009.
So I
went and did some work with the ODA unit that was at Fob Robinson and the Blitz out in Sangin province.
Yep, Sangin. I've Sangin quite a little bit.
Yeah.
So at Fob Robinson, I was there from 2007 to 2008. We had another ODA with us at that time. And then when we switched out from 2008, or on that trip, I think it was a National Guard unit came in, and then 2008, 2009, y'all probably came in right after us.
Okay.
I think y'all came in right after us, 2008, 2009. So we probably maybe did a left and right handover.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was the E7. I wasn't like in a leadership position.
Yep.
So it was just kind of
Same. We didn't spend like a lot of time out there. I was tasked because the Brits were getting their asses handed to them. They asked for sniper support, and we were actually out in Zabul province, and then myself and 2 other people got shifted over. Well, we volunteered to go to Bob Robinson, and then from there we went out with the Brits and did a bunch of sniper overwatch for them.
Yeah.
With the ODA unit that was there.
Okay. That might have been, it could have been, I don't know. It's hard talent.
I can tell, I know the ODA team that was there was fresh in country, and they had never been to Afghanistan before.
Okay, no, then that wasn't
so
us.
they were like, this was their first rodeo there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I can't remember if 3rd group replaced us on that 2007, 2008 trip, or the National Guard group replaced us and they came over them. I know 3rd group replaced us 1 year, and the National Guard replaced us the 2nd year.
Yeah.
The 2nd time.
There's no joke out there.
No joke. I
That
did
was
almost
a good
2
time.
years, and 2 years at Fob Robinson, going out and doing combat operations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that place was a mess.
Oh yeah, banging and singing for a reason.
Yep.
So like that whole ODA was born again hard, like really quick there. Yeah. So.
And the Marines out there were
so
dark horse.
Yeah. So whenever we actually got into to Sangin, we actually went with the conventional force and we cleared it out when the British were there and the British couldn't leave their fire base.
Yeah.
We actually, I was there doing that clearing operation, and we cleared all of Sangin. I'm talking about full forward line of troops clearing that whole operation up there. And then once we cleared it, then they're like, oh, hey, now you're staying at Firebase Rob. And we did 10 months there at Fob Rob, going out, Sangin, Kajaki Sofla, Musa Calais, all of those places.
Hot spots.
All those hot spots, yeah. Yeah, so, we got after it quite a little bit, man. I try to, like... It's hard to like explain those stories because it's
almost like you're just like, dude, I'm not embellishing. This is how it was.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like just like there's certain stories where I'm like, I'm not even going to tell them. But then there was like there's some to like where you're like every day was out, troops in contact. The guys we had a board up there, the team guys did. We had it where it was they had a board where it's like days without killing, and it like barely went over 1 day. It was like 0, and they.
That's how you know you're on a good deployment.
Oh yeah. We were crushing it. So
you're first. So obviously you check into the team, you go right to Afghanistan.
Yeah, go right to Afghanistan.
And you're doing. Is that OJT? Like, hey, keep up. Learn.
Yeah. So when I first got to the team, right, and then we went to Afghanistan. We go to Firebase Mahalik originally, and Mahalik, if you've ever been to Mahalik is actually a nice fire base. They had like a pool in there. It was like crazy. So when we originally get there, I had already deployed a few times, and some of the other SF guys hadn't deployed before, right? There were still some like new guys there.
Yeah, SF babies.
Yeah, SF babies, and they've been on the team longer than I have been, but they hadn't done like really deployed or whatever. So I was like, oh man, this is bullshit. This isn't real deployment or whatever. I think we were at Mahalik for like maybe a week. And then this operation to go clear the Sangin Valley came out. So initially we were going to go through and clear it, and then we were supposed to come back to Mahalik. I never seen Mahalik again.
Yeah.
So we're 1 week in country, get there, clear the Sangin Valley, right? And then once that operation was done, they're like, hey, you're going to stay at Firebase Robinson. So we were living out of gun trucks. I was sleeping in the moon dust. Yep. And Fob Rob, I wouldn't say me, but the whole ODA was sleeping in the moon dust right over there. They had put us over there right next to a HESCO barrier where the burn pit was. Like, we didn't even have an area that was worth a shit. So we would sleep there just only to be protected to somewhat, so you could actually get a full night's sleep. We'd do a refit, and then we'd go back out, and then we'd get after it, troops in contact, and then we'd only go back really to resupply and come out
again
until we started getting the bundles, right, to where, because a lot of times people wouldn't even fly out there.
Oh yeah,
they wouldn't. Like, people don't even understand. Like, they would not even fly.
That was a straight up dangerous, just probably one of the most dangerous places in Afghanistan. like to this day, and I've been all over Afghanistan. That was nuts.
Yeah, like it was insane, and it's like, and I get there, and that's what never experiencing combat, and then not experiencing combat to that level, and then going to be an SF, and then as soon as I get there, like, so when they did the 4 line of troops, there's one team that was that's why I say be careful what you wish for. Is there's one team that was out probing in front of the flot, right, and they were on the radio. You could hear the 50 cal rocking, you know what I mean? The captain's on there like just calling in cast, and they're crushing it, right?
Yeah.
And we're back, and we've been clearing, but because it was a flot, we really wasn't in too much like contact at that point. And then here I am as a cherry guy, staff sergeant, like, hey sir, why don't we go up there and help? Like this is what I'm like thinking, like, right? Yeah. I'm ready to get after it, like, you know what I mean? I came here to get after it, not to sit back here, right? Not thinking I got another year left of this, you know. And
like, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly, right? But your head's not there.
No,
like,
dude.
You know,
you're young. You're like,
young,
let's go,
full of testosterone, and just want to get after it. You know?
Yes.
And then so the command team on the radio, like they call them, they're like, hey, listen, not the radio, but on the radio, they're like, hey, we need you to pull back. Right, we don't have enough support there. You're up there on your own, like kind of going rogue. They weren't supposed to do that in the first place, right? I think they just kind of went rogue on thetheir own, and then they just went comms black. And when I tell this to like other like guys in the soft community, they're like, "What? How would they do that?" I'm like, "This is the beginning of the war. Like, there's a lot of like liberties that were able to be played to a certain point.
Yeah, during that time.
That time frame, yeah. And so, anyways, they went comms black, and then they come back up on the horn, and they're like, and then it was pandemonium. Like you could hear in their voice, like there's something happened. Spig 9 went right through a mud hut and went straight into their vehicle, right? And then now they're calling for support. So now we're the closest team to them. We go up there and pull support, and then we're there, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is real, you know? I'm talking about PKMs shot at, you know what I mean, within this room distance, RPGs blowing up over your head, getting shot at by recoilless rifles, shot at you know what I mean? And recoilless rifles, you know, they're kind of almost like our Carl Gustavs.
Yep.
So you can hear when they shoot.
Oh, it's a scary feeling.
It's a scary feeling.
Yeah.
As soon as they shoot, you just move. You have no clue where it's coming from. You just move. You may have a general, kind of idea. But yeah, so that was the initial troops in contact.
So was that your first troops in contact?
That was my first real troops in contact.
Yeah. So how was that like as your first one? Because obviously you experienced a butt ton more than that through your career, and I always like to like get people's perspective on their first one. Like, how was that like absorbing all of that, everything that was coming in? For the first time.
So the first time you kind of look at it is like, it's like one of those things. I guess it'd be anything that you think that you want to do, and the reality of the real world hits. Right, because you're there running, you're like, you have this idea of what combat looks like until you're there, and you realize it's not your idea that you think you have, you know, like so you're being engaged, and the enemy's shooting at you, and you don't see them like you do on the TV, right? So you're like, I have no clue where they're shooting at me from, right? So you're being engaged by PKMs, RPGs, and I'm like, I don't see them. Right? So you're like, and then it takes so long to be shot at to where you start really understanding the general direction of where you're getting shot at.
Yeah.
It's not like in the movies where like you get shot at and the guy goes, oh, third floor, this building.
Give the 3Ds.
Yeah.
The distance, direction, description.
Yeah, exactly.
That takes a second to...
that takes a long time, and depending on where you're at, it's hard to tell because they're behind cover too. They're back. You just think about it. They're not standing out in the open and shooting at you. They're in depths inside of a windowsill, and then you have all of this area over here, right? And then, in combat, I've seen guys being shot at, and they're shooting wrong direction. I'm like, no, bud, the enemy's fire is coming from here because they just haven't been shot at enough.
They don't have the experience.
They don't have the experience yet, right? And we all go through it, right? It's nothing that you do, but it took me a while to be shot at, and that trip afforded me that opportunity. To realize it, right? So before you start realizing, oh shit, okay, this is, and then you can start getting the 3Ds pretty good, But that initial trip was, it was like the realization of like, before then I was like, man, I thought I was a pretty tough kid. and then you're just kind of like, oh shit, like this is real.
This is for real.
This is for real. And at any moment, one of these rounds can be on mark, and I'm done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's where the kind of I think the thought process is like one of those things. You got to be careful what you wish for. You know.
Yep, it is. And I can look back on the first time, similar situation, and it's your situational awareness is so not there. Like you're just in the moment, and you're just reacting to what you've been trained to do, and you don't even know what you're doing. You're just like, yep, all right, we're getting shot at now. This is what I know to do. But looking back as a new guy, like it didn't matter to me what was going on completely around me, right? It was like, this is what I can affect, and I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then as you gain experience through the years of doing that over and over, then everything starts to widen, and your horizon starts your aperture becomes a lot greater, and then you can really start making calls to affect the battlefield.
Yeah, that takes time.
Yeah,
because like exactly what you're saying, like you're at that point. I'm so in the moment. As far as that's the one thing I will say, I didn't have any problem with violence of action.
No,
right? I didn't have no problem with that. Like the Bravo Committee, I will say, the SF-18 Bravo Committee. Well, I was T for trained for violence of action. So even though I didn't know exactly where the enemy was coming from, like I was getting heads down wherever.
Yeah.
Because that 50 cal was rocking, right? You know what I mean? I was transitioning over to the 240, like I was putting rounds down range, you know? So, but exactly same there. Like you're in the moment, and I remember like engaging, like, okay, I think they could be coming from this building, maybe this window. So you engage there, right? And then you get shot at some more, and you're like, that's not the right location, right? So then you engage, it's, known, likely, suspected. And that's what I've been trained to do,
Yep.
And then at some point you're like, and you're doing that. And what people don't understand, this wasn't, at that location, this wasn't like a 15 minutes troops in contact. This was all day long, every day. So the standard SOP in the Helmand province was you would show up, women and children would leave the location, right? Women and children, you start seeing them leave. And then you're like,
chatter starts picking up.
ICOM chatter starts picking up, and then it's game on.
Yeah.
Right? Then once the rounds, then they start getting after it, right? You'll be in 4-hour troops in contact. It starts getting hot. There'll be a little lull in the firefight. It picks back up again.
You can really set your watch to it.
It is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I got 8 hours of troops. Like you would go in there and pull a work shift, 8 hours troops in contact. You'd be 4 hours in the morning. They would take a little lunch break. Then you'd be another 4 hours. And then when night came, then from there, we only had really one time whenever we had a Chinook shot down to where they fought at night. The rest of the time,
they barely fight.
They barely fight. They because we own the night. You know? So then when nighttime would come, it'd get dusk or whatever. Then it'd be another
50 on, 50 off rotations.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, all right, let's get it on again in the morning.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, but you know what, man? Those were like some of the best days.
Oh man,
I remember being there because I went to Iraq first when that was like strictly DA heavy. We were hitting targets, fast and furious each night. And then when we went to Afghanistan, it was like, okay, this is like a video game to where, like you said, we show up in the morning, there go the women and kids. Here comes the ICOM chatter, and half the time you're like, they give their position away in the ICOM chatter, and you're like, that's where they are right there. And then you start setting up to like destroy them. Yeah. And it was good times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Until someone gets hurt.
Until somebody gets hurt, yeah. And then it make you very cold. That's when we kind of talked about the anger and the violence. It starts becoming a part of you, and you get very, 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 very cold.
Yes, you get desensitized. You become less empathetic to a lot of things around you. And then, that was your first time to Afghanistan. How many more times did you end up going?
So I went to, that trip was 2007 to 2008. We did roughly about 10 months there. I came back, went to Sodiq, and then we redeployed back there again from 2008 to 2009, which was another 10 months in the Helmand province. And then from there, I did my instructor time at the weapons committee, then came back, and then went to did the Kandahar mission, and then came back, and then went again as a team sergeant, and then I was supposed to go again as a company sergeant major right before the end of Afghanistan, and that Afghanistan thing pulled back.
Okay.
So I want to say
So you had long major
four
deployments.
long ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
Over
four
there.
long ones in Afghanistan. I think it's 4,
Yeah.
maybe 5. I'm not sure. I think it's
I'm-
4. I think it's 4. Those two trips to the Helmand province were the ones like the hardest.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other ones weren't that bad.
Good.
I mean, they were. I still troops in contact.
But not compared to
Not
and
compared
that's-
to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Hellman was no joke.
Yeah.
And did you guys just take part in the Marja push?
So we were in Musa Calais. We did the Musa Calais, but the Marja push. I don't think we did the Marja. I don't remember doing the Marja push.
That's about the time I went back up there to Robinson.
Okay.
And we took part in that as well.
Yeah, I think that was in 09, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we moved out because we left. We left out. Yeah, I don't think we did part in that one there. It was
Okay.
Musa Calais.
Yeah.
I'd have
And
to ask the guys,
it gets
man.
all
It gets kind of
jumbled
muddled up
too.
together.
Yeah, same
you know?
with me.
So
So
we did the turbine in Kajaki Sofla. We did that push through,
okay.
and then and I think we did Musa Calais. I don't think we did Marja.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we might have been
Yep.
just missed each other.
yeah, I think
then.
I just missed each other.
So with like all those deployments, obviously, I want to
Yep.
get to like the meat and potatoes, and I'm sure you got plenty of combat stories
Yep.
from each one. But like you had hit on earlier, just the effect that sort of has on you, as you know, you keep going back to the same spots,
Yeah.
and you're getting what you asked for. You're like, this is what I wanted, but then you start seeing some of the cons
Mm-hmm.
to how that's affecting you.
So, you know, it's funny. Your mind, you tell your mind whatever, and it'll listen.
Yep.
You know, so like that first trip, like the reality of combat hit in, but then I got so instilled with the adrenaline of it that whether I loved it or I told myself I loved it, I learned to love it, and I
Yeah.
started chasing it like over and over and over again. You know, it was especially with my background and like kind of coming up, that was the one thing in my life that I was really, really good at. So because I was good at it, I you know, succeeded in it, I was always like, if there was a trip coming up, I was volunteering.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the events that happened later on in my career, I'd probably still chasing after it right now.
Yeah. It consumes you.
It consumes you.
Yeah.
You know, good or bad, like it consumes you, you know. So like I picked up that warrior mindset, and I was just like, I was very much like after it. When I became a team sergeant, all my new guys before we left to go to Afghanistan, like I set them all down. Well, not just new guys, a whole team. I'm like, hey, listen, we're getting ready to go, and I'm like, we're gonna get after it. So if that is not something you want, let me know offhand, and I will make a reason for you to be switched out, and nobody else will know about it. You know what I mean? They'll know that you left, but it could be for whatever reason, whatever.
Yeah.
I won't let
You
you know
gave 'em
because
an
of this. I give you an out because when
Did
we
anybody
get there,
take you up on that out?
nobody took me
No.
up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were all after it, you know.
Yeah.
And then, but like I wanted to be 100% like, because I've been in combat to where guys weren't bought in or they didn't have it all the
Yep.
time, right? And those guys are toxic, right? And those guys can make or break you, and you can't be going out and do combat operations to where you're like, oh, we should have did X, we should have done Y. Like, no, that time, like combat happens, you respond to it,
Yep.
and you act according to your plan. Sometimes you have to adjust, but there's no time to go back and like, don't get me wrong, you do AARs, lessons learned, right?
Oh yeah, afterwards, but not
Afterwards?
during. Not during.
Not during, and then when we get back, AARs, lessons learned, whatever, boom, we addressed it there. I don't want to hear about it again. There's no bitching, no moaning, because in combat, you can do everything right and somebody die, and you can do everything wrong and everybody live.
Yep.
Right? So it doesn't mean that you still don't try to do everything right tactically, but that,
Yeah, what I would tell my guys when I was in charge is like, listen, man, I'm gonna make calls.
Yep.
That's you can guarantee I will make a call.
Yeah.
I'm like, will it be the right one each and every time?
Yeah.
No, because I'm human and I might make a call that doesn't make sense to you. But I was like, all I'm asking for you to do is if I do make a call that you don't agree with, is execute that call to the best of your ability, and then we will discuss it afterwards. I'm like, but during that time, like the last thing I want is oh, what, then start arguing back and forth. I'm like, a bad call executed perfectly is better than, a right call where you have people arguing back and forth, and then that it takes forever, right? It'll buff out in the end if everybody's on the same page and we execute that call perfectly, and then we can discuss the better avenues we could have taken afterwards.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, so I seen that, so I was very, very much on like. So I tried to nip that in the bud before it even started. Because I seen that as a junior E6 and as an E7.
Oh, same.
So by the time I was in an E8, I'm like, nah, I'm not having that shit on my team. So.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had some good, solid dudes. The luck of the draw, and I had enough time with them before we deployed to weed out any that I thought would not going to make the standard.
Yeah. How hard is that to get rid of dudes if you're like, hey,
it
man,
depends.
this guy.
It depends on the leadership at that time.
Yeah.
Right. I've been very fortunate that I haven't had a problem getting rid of guys if I thought that I needed to get rid of. But I did I tried to teach, coach, mentor guys to where they needed to be. As long as their character trait was fine, everything else we could get through. As long as they had a good character, they were a team player, the rest of the stuff, bro, I can get you better at PT, right? I can get you better at, you're not meeting this standard for whatever, in tactics or shooting, whatever. I can get you better. If you're a toxic person, gone. I can't get you better on that. If you're like a liar, I can't get you any better on that.
Yeah.
If you're that kind of person, it's like, so
we don't need you around.
I don't need you around.
I don't care if you're a rock star operator.
It doesn't matter if you're a rock star or other. Yeah.
That's what I think people don't understand either, man. Is character in our profession means a lot. It's like, dude, you could be the best shooter, the best guy at CQC, the best at this, but dude, if you have a toxic character, like if you have traits that are red flags up and down, we don't need you here, because all that is going to do is spread throughout the platoon, and it's going to hurt our ability to do our job.
Oh yeah, and especially you get too many guys that are like in their heads that are like solid dudes. I'm not talking about solid dudes. I'm talking about guys kind of what you're talking about. They're the best shooters, the best runners. You get too many of those guys on a team. Oh man, it's like, nah, bro, y'all can't fit your head through the door. Like, y'all gotta go somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then it's like this whole, unless they got a good character traits. Now, don't get me wrong. You have guys like that that'll.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but they're just like, sometimes it's not great.
Well, yeah, you got too many alphas, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and that is also part of our communities too, where it can get toxic real quick, real fast.
Yeah.
If you don't nip it in the butt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you give guys buy-in, I think for me, because I had a lot of I had some solid pipe hitters on my team. They were senior dudes, and they were rock stars. The way I managed that was sometimes you got to be the biggest dog in the room at times, or you have to have somebody else to help like corral those guys, and you just got to give them buy-in, man. As soon as like in a leadership position, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. You're in charge of this. You execute it. And I had some SOPs in the room or in the team room to where we all bought in on it. And I'm like, hey, these are the rules. We all put them in together.
Yep.
We're going to execute. And I didn't have any problems, man. Those dudes were solid, man. My team starting time, I was very, very happy with it. Not everybody gets that.
No, it's hit or miss.
It's hit or miss.
Yeah, it depends on who you get.
Yeah.
It's I like my last platoon, obviously, with everything that happened.
Yeah.
I had some toxic dudes in that platoon, but it was and people are always like, oh, your whole platoon. It's like, no, man, it was 3 guys.
Yeah.
3 guys caused all of that mess in that platoon. The rest of the guys, it had nothing to do with it. But that only took 3 individuals to take down, pretty much an entire community at the time.
Yeah.
So.
And what's that saying there too? Kind of when you mention that, it kind of makes me think it's like, because most guys in the community just want to stay out of it. They don't want to talk up, right? So, but then if you have the minority saying stuff and nobody else is speaking up, then you got a problem with that there too.
Well, yeah.
Because when they just like, okay, I don't want to be a part of it. Well, if you're not a part of it and only 3 people are being vocal, right?
Yep.
Then they take the platform.
Oh, the legal ramifications is why most of the guys are like, if I do speak up, now I'm going to get involved in this murder case. And I don't blame them. At the end of the day, they're like, dude, this has gotten so out of hand.
Yeah.
It's when it gets to that point, then guys are like, it's all fear based.
Yep.
It's like if you do speak, you're going to be in the same position as Eddie. And
Yeah.
so guys are like,
That's rough.
I'm good.
Yeah, because the guy's still thinking about their wife and kids.
Oh
and
yeah,
everything
dude.
else,
And that's,
man.
your livelihood,
Livelihood.
your career, everything. I mean, that's what people don't get when stuff like that happens. It's like all that is involved. And
Yeah.
so people's decision-making process becomes a lot different. The whole, long live the brotherhood and I'll be there for you for anything. It's like, oh, until something like this happens and it's like, hey, dude, I got to take care of my own.
Yeah.
You know?
That's rough.
Yeah. So you had, we'll get into some of the meat and potatoes here, which I know you had something happen in your family.
Yeah.
Was that during one of your last deployments?
No, I was right at COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, right after COVID hit. So in 2020, so I did my first sergeant. I did all of my team time, and I left my team, and then I went to be the first sergeant at First Special Forces Command. And I was a GEO bachelor during that time. I never recommend that. So I did that for like 2 years, about a year and a half, I think, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife and kids stayed here in Florida when I went to Bragg to do that. And then we came back from there, and then I got picked up for the E9 for Sergeant Major. And then, so I did that. And then I went to schoolhouse to go for the Sergeant Major for JSOFC. And then they put me up at the 3 at group. And then once they put me in a company, it was like the team was just getting back from Afghanistan, and they took some losses. Or not the team, the company was getting back from Afghanistan. So they were still on leave, right? So I hadn't even met them yet. And I was just put into position as the company sergeant major. And I was only going in, like COVID was kind of like just starting, and they were just starting to like lock stuff down, right? And they didn't like kind of know exactly how this was going to, like, you know what I mean? Like nobody knew what was happening with this shit, you know? And then I get a phone call that my oldest son was in a motorcycle accident, and this was like early in the morning while I was getting ready to go to the company. And then so from there I left the house, went to the hospital, and we get there, and my wife ended up meeting me there at the hospital. She was at work, and like they had all of the hospitals closed down at that point.
Yeah, because of
COVID, right? The only time you could go to the hospital is if it was like an emergency. So they had like a skeleton crew there, but they weren't like taking procedures or whatever. And when I got there, I remember there was a cop and somebody from the office or the thing there, and they weren't letting anybody in the hospital. So like the cops there was like, hey, you can't enter. And I'm like, bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? My son's in there, right? You know? And he's like, no, you can't enter. He's like, and then I'm like, now we're arguing. And, my wife's there, and like she's hysteric. My mother-in-law's there. And we have like no status of kind of what his status is, you know? And then finally I'm like, hey, I'm going inside that door. Either you can arrest me or not, but I'm going inside, you know? And then luckily, like right before, like I started going in there, a nurse came out and was like, hey, y'all can come inside, you know? But like my heart's racing, and the worst feeling you can ever feel in your life, you know? So we go inside the hospital, and we're there. It seemed like forever, but it was only like maybe a couple minutes, right? And the hospital's empty. Nobody's in the hospital, right? Just the medical providers, but there's nobody like in the waiting room or anything. And then so it's got like that eerie feeling. You're just like, because it's not normal, you know? And then she comes out here, and she's, one of the medical staff was like, he didn't make it. So, like right then, like I just fucking lost it, man. Like it took me 4 years, it's been 5 years now before I could even tell the story. It's like we deal with grief to where you just push it down like for so long, and you're like, I don't know how to handle it without losing it.
Yes.
So you just keep pushing it away and push it away and push it away till like you don't know what to do. Like you don't know how to hold on to it. You don't know how to let it go, And man, I just lost it. And then I remember going back there and seeing them, and like being with them before. Oh man, so yeah, so I was with them, and I remember like I was like holding his hand, and I'm just like, and I'm thinking like I got to tell his brothers and his sister, you know, because they're at school, they don't even know what's going on yet, you know. And as a father and as a man, you're like, that's your job to protect your family, and then when you're unable to do that, like you feel like just such a failure, you know.
Yeah. I can't even begin to imagine, man.
Yeah.
What that
So yeah, so we after you know we left the hospital. Obviously it was during COVID, and my wife is like, I want to have a funeral for him, you know. So now we're going to these funeral homes, and they're denying because it's during COVID. They're like, we're not going to have a funeral. We're not going to have a funeral. So now I am here. I'm like, we're going to have a funeral. Like, I'm dead set. Like, we're going to have a funeral, you know? And I'm like, my wife wants it. Like, I am going to move mountains to make it happen, you know? And luckily, we went to the one funeral home, and he was like, I kind of teetering like back and forth, you know? And I'm like, listen, man, I said, I'll go and I'll have every guy from the company here. Like, I'll call everybody. I'll have 100 people. If you want, like, whatever procedures you need, I will make sure that they happen. You know what I mean? So for us to let you have the funeral, and he's like, yeah. So we had the funeral, and it was a standard funeral. Like, we didn't cap as many people that could come. So all of his friends came, you know, family was able to come, you know. And then so like it was like a normal standard funeral.
yeah,
you know,
which thank God.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was good. You know, because my wife didn't go back there initially whenever right after the accident, so she got to see him at the funeral. You know?
Okay, so she didn't go back and look.
She didn't go back there. Like she has a really really hard time.
I can't imagine. Man.
Yeah. And her childhood was not great either, right? Obviously, so she was dealing with her own stuff, and then now,
yeah,
you know what I mean. So she had a very 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 hard time. You know,
going forward after that, how were things?
Oh man, so
I mean,
so I was still.
This was what, 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So so it's 5 years ago, and we like me and my wife planned and did the whole funeral, right? And because there's nobody there to like really, you know what I mean. So we planned it. So I felt like there's no time to process anything during that time. And then, like after the funeral, me and my wife, you know, I remember like, well, what do we do? You know. And not from any of their, like her work and group was like, hey, take all the time that you need.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no expectations of me coming back at any time, whatever, right? Like they supported 100%. But I think we came back after a week, like maybe a week.
Really?
Because I was like, I don't know. Man, I was just laying in bed. I couldn't even get out of bed.
You don't know how to process.
I don't know how to process it, you know? And I'm just like, well, what do we do? Like, we still have other kids here. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's the one thing is when you deal with trauma, kind of like we did, and this whole time, like all this combat and everything as a kid, you compartmentalize everything. So you just go back to what you know.
Yep. What's comfortable?
What's comfortable is I put it in a box and I just deal with it whenever that time comes, and I just explode.
Yep.
Right? So that's how I dealt with it. You know, I'll just put it in this little box where I have everything else that I've got stored, and I'll continue on. You know what I mean? And have this face that I got it all under control.
Which
until
is
you
so
don't.
dangerous.
Which is dangerous as shit.
Yeah.
You know, because somebody else is going to pay the price for that box that I have on there.
Unexpected time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and not at the opportune time frame either, right?
Yeah.
And mostly in the time where you're probably wrong, right? So, so anyway, so then we went back to work. I went back to work, and those guys were just coming back from their trip, and they had a very hard trip. They lost a few guys, you know, And truthfully, like those guys were the only thing like kind of really keeping me afloat at that time, because I was in a leadership position, and I'm like, I still have to perform for these guys.
It's a lifeline.
It's a lifeline, you
Yeah.
know. But at the same token, at that point, I went away from the PT. Like I was having a hard time just dealing with shit. You know, my whole thought process of what success looked like in life had totally changed.
Yeah.
You know.
How were you like dealing with? I mean, because I can't imagine the amount of like emotion and everything else that is probably consumes you or overwhelms you when dealing with something like that.
Yeah.
Like, what were you doing at the time to sort of suppress all that? Were you drinking? Was it?
So I was drinking. But I wasn't. I was never like I wasn't drinking to a point to where I was like passed out and I couldn't get up
Yeah.
to it. You know what I mean? But it was just enough to kind of numb
To suppress
it, you know. But because like I still had to get up to be at work, you know what I mean, all that.
Yeah,
I still had to
you just function.
I still had to function,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I was drinking quite a little bit, and then I think I don't know, man. I was just numb and then just trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was kind of the biggest thing for me. You know, and I tried to like apply those same disciplines, you know, and that those things that you're good at when you compartmentalize stuff. Just ignore it and then just kind of do busy work.
Yeah.
You
Keep
know,
your mind distracted.
keep your mind distracted
from what really you should be focusing on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't it crazy, man? Like because I've talked to different guys that have gone through different experiences, and myself included. Like the country looks at special operations as like some of the toughest guys and whatever, and I think a lot of it is because we are good at compartmentalizing. It's like we're good with trauma, but at the same time we're not. We're some of the worst at it, to where it's like when it's time to face that trauma, like, hey, you probably should process this. We are, I think, some of the worst at it, of like taking it head on, because it's like, nope, I don't want to go through that pain, because that's a different type of pain that I'm not used to dealing with. You can throw all the physical, mental pain on me all you want. Like I'll deal with that, but as soon as you want me to face my emotions and have to work through that, that is probably some of the biggest mountain for us to climb. And because I say that from personal experience.
yeah, 100%. And the thing about it is there's no training on it.
No.
Right? And I don't know, because this is the skeleton in the box, right? Once you start unpacking it, how are you going to respond to it, right? I am a killing, war-fighting machine as I'm compartmentalizing it, right? What happens whenever, and this is my thought process too, right? What happens if I bring a little bit of this out and I deal with it in between deployments? Can I deal with it and still go back to the guy I need to be?
Yep.
Or can I not, right? And I don't even know if the military knows, because there's no training on this, right? Like at the end of the day, and that's why I say now there's nothing wrong to like, because in combat or anytime you're dealing with trauma, like at that time is not the time to deal with it. And probably during that deployment is not the time to deal with it. But if you don't deal with it at some point, all you're doing is your bag just getting bigger. Like that box is only holding so much shit, that bag, and it's going to break
It'll
open.
overflow.
It's going to overflow at some point, right? And it's just a ticking time bomb, right? So at what point after that 10-month deployment do I need to, whatever that looks like, do I need to come out and be like, okay, listen, you need to unpack this shit before so you can be ready for the next one?
Yeah.
And we do a terrible job at that, terrible job.
Yeah. We're experts at compartmentalizing. Until we're not anymore. And then once it starts overflowing, then it's like, now you're left with this mess that you probably should have at least processed 50% of that along the way. But that's the juxtaposition though, right? Especially from our careers, we were privileged enough to serve during the whole GWAT, right? Which no regrets. I loved every
Yep.
second of it. I'd do it again in a heartbeat if you let me. But I'm always like, at what time, like if I was to go back and do things differently, like, and I'm like, oh, well, at what time would I then take time to process? And it's like, there's none. There, like, I can't think back and like, oh, this would have been a good time, because then that would have taken away from me getting ready for the next deployment, or me, you know, doing whatever I needed to do to accomplish that job, or to be good at that job. And that's where, you know, with these guys coming in as well, like I get called, I'm sure maybe you will too, with guys that are like, hey, I want to be a Green Beret, and like, what advice do you have to give me? There's a part of me that wants to tell them, like, don't make this your identity. Don't make this like everything in your life. But then the rest of me is like, there's no other way. Like, if you want to be a proficient operator, a killer, like the best you can be for this country, I just don't see any other way for them to, it should be part of your identity.
Yeah. I said that before, so kind of a couple points there. When we talk about making it everything, we would have team parties. Everybody's wives and kids are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make a speech about how my ODA becomes before my wife and kids, as my wife and kids are standing there.
Yep.
And I said, when you're in combat, the guy next to you comes before any and everything. Because if you don't, then you're not bringing that guy home. And if he doesn't put you first, then you don't come home. Because that's, if you care about your wife and kids, you put that team before them, because that's the only way you're coming home, right? And that's the way team life was, you know. So like, how do you do that without that becoming?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, there's no. You want to talk about? You know, we talk about, you know, balance. Like I think being intentional is good. Always had a hard time with balance. When I go all in, I go all in, right?
Yeah.
And even now,
extremism
to a point. It's like, I don't see how you do that job, at least in combat, without, there's zero balance in your life.
No.
Now, what I think you should do is you would be able to learn how to be intentional, which at that time I was okay, but I could have been a lot better. So that time when I'm not deployed or I'm not training, be with my family, like do the thing, like go on the vacations, spend time with your kids.
And be present.
And be present at that time. But when you're putting all this stuff in there, it's hard to come by and be like as loving as a father as you think that you probably should have been when you're carrying all this shit.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're not the dad at Disneyland with the 1,000-yard stare.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so, or stressed out that you're there, or already anxious or frustrated. So your kid wants to do something and you're worried about a million other things and not present and not dealing with that stuff there too, you know. Sometimes the kids notice it, sometimes they don't, you know.
They notice. What I've come to realize is they noticed the whole time, but they, at least with my kids, they noticed, but they were like, okay, you know, they understood a little bit. But now that they're all older, I mean, my youngest he's turned 16 today. They'll only put up with it for so long, and then they're like, okay, like, Dad, you need to come back down to reality, and start working on yourself. But that wasn't until they got older, you know, and that's where I was like, that was a big awakening for me, is when my kids started voicing their concerns. You're like, okay, maybe I am fucked up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow too, you know.
It is, but I think we need guys like us. You need that hard pill to swallow sometimes.
100%.
Someone needs to just shove it down there and be like, do something, you know.
And I've learned, like, the more, like, I've actually kind of, you know, on social media, everybody thinks everything's so perfect.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I always try to voice the fact that it's not, you know. And even, like, kind of we talked about before this even started, like, I worked on myself, but it's still a daily battle, you know. And there's still days that are good, and there's still days that are like, man, this ain't so great, you know. So like, it's a constant, like give yourself grace from how far you've came, but then at the same token, you're like, I still got some shit I got to work on.
Yeah, don't get complacent.
Don't get complacent,
because you just slip back.
Yeah, slip right back into where you were at.
So from that point, you know, obviously when you lost your son, and then you went right back into work, which is, I think, for the listeners that might sound crazy, but honest, like for me, I'm like, yep, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
From there, like how did things sort of like unravel, or not unravel, I didn't mean that word, but like going forward, and just I'd like to like know how you were able to get to where you are now, man, because I can't imagine. So just to be honest, like, I told you I looked up your story, and I was tracking along, and then when you brought up the story losing your son, like even just that 30 seconds, I was bawling, dude, by myself. Like I could not imagine going through a pain like that. My son who turned 16 today, we had an incident where I thought, he got in a bicycle crash and cracked his whole face. I mean, we found him unconscious in a pool of blood. And just like that feeling alone of like taking him to the hospital, and like you have no control. And just like you said, as a father and a man, you're there to protect. Like then when you feel like you're helpless, you're like, dude, I've failed. And just, obviously, thank God my son's still alive, but I can't imagine like like trying to recover from that and doing the job still, and having the rest of the family to worry about. Like, how did you get through that?
So originally, I looked up, well, there's different ways to grieve and the processes you go through. I didn't start my grieving process until I came out of position. I just put it in a box.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time I was there as a company sergeant major, I mean, I wasn't PTing because I felt like shit, and that was the one thing that before then was keeping me afloat. Like, people don't understand how important doing PT and being physically fit. Like, for me, it was very, very important. But then I didn't even feel like doing that. So to me, that was a bad thing, not a good place to be in, right? I wasn't a big drinker, but I was still I was drinking, and that doesn't help out at all. And I just put it in a box all the way up through my company sergeant major time, all the way up until the Afghanistan withdrawal. So the Afghanistan withdrawal, I was supposed to deploy again as a company sergeant major to Afghanistan, and I hadn't even told my wife yet. And I'm like, we just lost our son, and this was like not, within a year or so ago, and we were getting ready to go again to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And like, you know how it is being in leadership positions at that point. Like, I wasn't going to go up to my command and say, hey, I'm probably not in the best place to go on this trip.
No.
I'm going. Because you call it ego or whatever, I was looking to my left and right, and I go, even as jacked up as I am, I feel like I'm the best person to help these guys get through this trip.
I'm needed.
I'm needed, right? I have the combat experience like nobody else, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I told myself that I needed to be there, right? So whether that was right or wrong, the jury's still out on that, right? So, but as soon as the debacle in Afghanistan, the withdrawal happened, and they withdrew, I went into the Group CSM's office like the next day, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. And the CSL, which is the Command Sergeant Major list that was like getting ready to come out, it hadn't came out yet. He's like, hey, listen, stay on you come out on the list. We're gonna put you in a battalion. I'm like, you can make me the Sergeant Major of the Army. You can make me a Sergeant Major of the world. I don't give a shit. Like, I am done. Like, I am out. Like, there's nothing left for me. Like, the Afghanistan withdrawal was like the straw.
That was the tipping point.
Tipping point to where I'm like, we're not in combat anymore, right?
Yeah.
The
no
woke
point.
policy, everything there, I didn't agree with so much shit, right? And I'm just like, I'm done. I'm out, And that was kind of my tipping point there. And then once I pulled out of that kind of position, and now I didn't have like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that weight on you.
That weight of like, hey, these guys needed me, you know what I mean? Then I started really kind of spiraling out of control. And then now, at that point, then I had to turn back and like focus on my family, Marriage was coming apart, because you can't.
You guys have been through the ringer.
With this, probably almost most of the things that that breaks. Look up, hey, the top 10 things that people get divorced from, and I bet you me and my wife checked the box on a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we've been married for 25 years. So,
Congrats.
you know, and like this was one of those things where it was like she was grieving, I was grieving, and it's like when you're both broken and you're trying to, it's hard, man. It was tough. It was very, very difficult. And then for me, I'm just like, all right, I am not going to have this career, and then my marriage, we get a divorce
At the end of the
D
career.
word, right? Which I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to use in a, at all, right? That was like, and I'm like, we get this at the end because we can't get through this. I mean, we've got through everything else, like we're gonna get through this, you know. So I started going to therapy and getting back in the gym, right? Started eating healthy, you know, going through all these things that I knew as a Green Beret to do. Then I'm like, told my wife, I'm like, hey, we're going to marriage counseling together. And I'm like, you're going to counseling, right? And I'm like, so I'm like, you're going to counseling. I'm going to counseling individually. We're going to go to counseling together. Like, we're going to make this shit work, you know? And so I started getting back to that, you know, the physical portion, the nutritional portion, and trying to get my mind right. And then, but I was still angry.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do to your body and your mind. You know what I mean? I still had that, you know, that frustration of having a hard time dealing with society and the
normal
selfish,
transition.
the normal transition. You know what I mean? I didn't fit in with these people that I'm driving around and going to the gas station with. Like, I didn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm just
Yeah.
like, it was very me, self-centered kind of. You know what I mean? I had a very problem with that. I'm a very big respect person. A lot of people don't see that, and they're thinking about themselves. So like that stuff, those little things that just build up to
Little
where
triggers.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I started getting, you know, very the anger starting to come out, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm doing all this stuff, and then I'm still having problems in the marriage or whatever. And I told my oldest son, I'm like, hey, let's start going to church, you know. And
Were you guys going before this?
no,
Okay.
like sporadically throughout my career, I went sporadically. Like I've been baptized, I was Catholic, but sporadic,
Yeah.
right? I was I'm a Christian, right? And I didn't have a problem like saying that, you know, but I was still living the warrior lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? So there's a
Call them like
totally
a
different.
Creaster.
Yeah,
You go
yeah.
on Christmas and Easter.
Yeah,
church.
exactly. Yeah. So like that's kind of how I was, you know, still very much in a life of sin, I would say, to say the least, you know. So I started going to church, and we started going to a bunch of different churches, and you know, I had a problem with like the organized religion, you know, and I was at a very tough time. I was going to this church. I'm like, nope. I just, not the church's fault. I was finding a reason
Yes.
for everyone that I went to and be like, nope, not this one. Oh, that's hypocritical, or I don't like this pastor, or I don't like this you know what I mean? I was like, whatever. Oh, these people gossip too much, or these people, whatever. Like, I don't believe in that, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I think we hit every church in, like, the area, you know? And then we finally started going to we went to a church here, and then we're like, hey, listen, we really like the church. And then I started getting to, like, the small groups. And when I started going to small groups, it was difficult for me because a lot of these guys weren't pipe hitters.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, they're soft.
less soft,
Yeah.
right? So very difficult time for that. But at the same token, I'm like, maybe I need a little bit of that. Like, they got something that I don't have, and at least they're acting like they're happy to a certain point, because I'm not, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I continued going, and then I found a group that there were actually some SF guys, right? And then some guys that are aligned kind of a little bit more with our background, you know? And but then I started getting into scripture, like reading scripture, like the same way I read like Stoicism, and I seen the practical application to it. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going all in. And I'm like,
You saw the why behind it.
I saw the why. And then not just the why, but then I started kind of diving into, you know, how the Bible is written and that, because like I'm a pretty skeptical person too, right? So I kind of got to go in there and to things that's got to logically make sense to me, right? So I'm not just like I'm not just a blind believer. Like, I have to really look in there and like kind of get, okay, this, you know what I mean, and kind of go through the process, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, man, I'm going all in. So, and then hardest thing I ever did in my life is try to follow Jesus Christ. The most difficult thing I've ever done, you know. And so, and that's, you know, once I started doing that was kind of my first process of like getting some peace and able to kind of let go of some of that anger.
Yeah.
You know.
Was your family on board as well? Like,
so, my wife kind of went kicking and screaming for a while, you know. I'm just be 100% honest, you know. And so I started going. My son started going. He just got baptized this last year. My oldest son did. My oldest daughter got baptized. This is all, you know, within this last, after we started going to church.
yeah.
My youngest daughter got baptized. My wife was already baptized, but they all started going to church with me or whatever. My wife was kind of like, at first she didn't want to go, you know, because I mean,
No, it's different. I mean,
it's not just different, but for her, why would God take her son?
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to kind of like, right? If this, you know, and that's going to be
a
something,
natural reaction. Yeah.
you know, and because there were times within my career where she was going to church and she wanted me to go. I'm like, nah, I'm good. Or I'd go just to kind of show up, but I was still like,
Yeah. I'm in control.
not just, I'm in control and these people are weak.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that's my thought process at that time. I'm like, I got to stay strong. I got to stay sharp. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting ready to go to combat. I don't have time to unpack all this stuff and then kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what my thought process was, you know. You know, now obviously I see guys that do it and they do a very good job of it. I wasn't there,
I was the same.
you know.
Yeah.
So so yeah, but now she goes to church with us, you know. We go almost every Sunday. This last couple of weeks have been pretty rough just because I've been traveling quite a little bit, whatever, but we still go. I still have problems at times with that, but I kind of look at it. I look at church the same way I look at a hospital. Is people aren't going there because they're good, right? So for me to like,
Yeah. Going to heal.
going to heal, you're gonna have gossip in the church. You're gonna have
Oh,
all of that, all that stuff that like all the shit that you like have an issue with. It's gonna be there in the church, you know. So, but for you, is it bringing you closer to Christ? You know, I read scripture every day.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff really helps me more than the actual going to church.
And that's I'm on the same page as you, and I it's funny hearing you describe it because I went through the same thing. It's like my wife is a huge believer, our whole marriage, and that was like one of the, so we've been married 18 years. That was one of the contracts. It's like she's like, I will not marry you unless you have to be a believer. I grew up Catholic, so I'm like, oh yeah, of course, whatever, you know, not knowing like just the full everything that she believed, right? And the full extent of like what she was expecting. And so over the years, I played the game, you know, went to church every Sunday. It was like, all right, sweet. But, you know, just like you, like, I'm in control. These people are weak. This is pathetic. And then I had to get over the fact, because then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to church here. And I was doing the same thing. I'd find every excuse, like, oh, this pastor, he's up there in, like, freaking $500 outfit. Like, this dude's, you know, or like these people are walking around here like, oh, they're perfect. They're dressed in the same, you know, outfits and they're just putting on a front. I'm like, this is all fake. And what I've come to realize, man, is like, yes, just like you talked about, there are imperfections everywhere. And especially in church. I'm like, but your relationship with Christ is your relationship, not anybody else's. They have nothing to do with it. And that's where I got to a point where I'm like, my mornings are between me and Christ. And that is all that matters, is my relationship with him and how he is pouring into me each day when I let him like open up and be like, you know, whatever you want to pour into me today, and then just help me get through this day. And if I stopped like judging others, I was just like, I can't, because all that is just, you're just adding poison. You know.
Yeah, it's rough. It's tough.
It is, especially, because we come from communities where we judge each other and there's shame and there's everything else involved, and we're used to that. It's like, if you suck, we're going to let you know you suck, and we're going to shame you into not sucking.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things. That's the thing I still kind of struggle with judgment versus accountability. And like, I look at it to where I try to switch my mindset off of not judging someone else that I don't know, but still be able to hold people that's close to me accountable in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm falling off somewhere, like I want somebody to tell me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Be honest with
Be
me.
honest with me, you know? Like, hey, listen, you're falling off here or whatever. So I expect to do the same thing to them without judging them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is.
Yeah.
It is tough, but that's also trying to be Christ-like.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the toughest things, like you said, out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what are you like doing now as far as like, I know you're doing some coaching.
Yeah, so I'm doing like some coaching and consulting, trying to get like in the like the speaking space and that also. So that's kind of when I got out. We have a brick and mortar medical practice and like do HRT and aesthetics here local.
Oh, where we're at?
Yeah, in Freeport.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have that brick and mortar, but I was like, man, I got to do something else, you know. And my wife is kind of like, we're talking. She's like, well, why don't you help people kind of get through the same thing that you kind of got through or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like no clue how to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly, like do it through like, I'm like, well, you just don't put an ad in the yellow pages to do that. You know what I mean? Like, so that's where like the social media and the stuff kind of started like coming out, you know. And then because I was doing social media for our brick and mortar. Right? So then I'm like, all right, let me try to do this, you know, and that's where I kind of got in that space and
start branding yourself, which
kinda,
is also probably one of the most awkward things.
Awkward, difficult things that like
gut wrenching. You're like
very gut wrenching, you know.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that I have to do the thing that I want to do.
Yes,
and that's kind of how I look at it, you know. So I don't know how that'll kind of morph. Like I'm just still pretty new to the whole scene.
Yeah,
like I just retired, you know. So right now I do coaching and consulting. My intent is I wanted to do like speaking and leadership kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
In that space.
But you don't do that without doing something else first.
Yeah, you got to build up to that.
Build up
it's like everything else. Build up a reputation. Like, hey, okay, this guy's, legit. Let's have him come talk here.
Yeah.
So have you done any speaking engagements locally here? Or?
So I haven't done anything locally here. We did one. I've done a few. I've done one in Arizona for banking, for corporate banking, which was good. When it was active, I did a speaking event with the ODA. So talking about the Chinook, there was an operation where Chinook got shot down, and actually Jocko was there, spoke first, and then our team came up and then spoke right afterwards.
Okay.
On that operation that we did, and then what other ones? That's pretty much like kind of where I've had so far. Not a whole lot.
Do you have a what is that called when you do your speaking? A manager that.
So I don't have that yet.
Yeah,
because I like
Speakers Bureau type thing.
I don't have. Yeah, I mean, I signed up for Chad's for his thing that he had there
same.
now.
I did the same.
Yeah,
thing.
so like I'm kind of looking forward to that. Hopefully that helps out or whatever. But I don't have like a speaking like bureau like that gets me gigs.
Yeah,
because like I said, I'm just in the I have no clue how to like this portion of the world works yet. So
yeah, I'm still figuring it out.
Still trying to figure it out. Yeah, so it's one of those things where like eventually, hopefully, I'll somehow reach out or find someone.
I think you're going about it the right way, man. I think going on podcasts and just telling your story and being vulnerable, that's like the first step. It's like, okay, cool. This is my story. This is how I got to where I'm at, and this is what I'm doing now. I overcame this mountain of whatever adversity that was you were facing.
Yeah.
And I think more people listen to that, then they're like, oh, okay, that guy's got a crazy story, and then people want to hear you come talk. At least that's what I've seen since, I've been out 5 years now, and just like seeing different people and the speaking engagements they get, and where they started. Yeah. I haven't really delved into the speaking thing either too much. Yeah, I've been asked a couple times, but to me, it's always, they're like, oh, will you come talk? And then you're like, well, okay. And then from there, I'm like, what do I charge? Like,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
get any of that stuff. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. That's why I think like the speaking bureau, from what I understand, they do all that stuff for you.
They
so you don't have
do.
to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's the hardest. So this is the hardest thing that I've had problems with retiring. Kind of what we talked about before is I there want to help people out. So I feel like a shitbag even asking for money. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm like, I still got bills to pay. I can't do this for free, right? And it's like, so you're in this spot to where when I originally started doing the coaching and consulting, I was bringing guys on for like nothing because I was trying to help dudes out, like retired,
Yeah.
guys,
Doing what
right?
we're bred to do, which is
But the problem that I seen was the guys didn't have any buy-in on there, so they weren't executing the program. You know what I
got
mean?
you. Yeah.
So like they weren't executing the program, so or they didn't have the perceived value in it, right? So like, so you're kind of learning that, like, right? People get value out of something because of the, unfortunately, in the civilian side or in even whatever is what the value of what they pay for it too.
Yeah. What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have some kind of buy-in, right? And that's where that kind of comes into too, So, like in the charity space is something I'm not really familiar with yet. So like, you know what I mean? So I'm like thinking, well, okay, well maybe you do something like that. So then you don't have to charge
Yeah.
guys in our community for it.
But then you got to raise money.
Then you got to raise money, right?
Yeah.
Then you have to, all that's a process. You
Yep.
just don't come out here and
And
just
then
like,
you're going back. I find it easier to raise money. So like with our nonprofit,
yeah,
like if they asked me to go speak for a nonprofit, which I've done,
Mhm.
where I'm like, I'm not getting paid for it.
Yep.
But I'm asking for money.
Yep.
I can do that all day long. It's like, cool, this is not for me, this is for other people. But then as soon as it's for me or like I have the hardest time like getting through that and trying to do it, in a manner where I'm like, yeah, I'm getting paid for this. Because it's something that's not, we've had that beaten out of us for so long, and then to turn around, get out, and go against the very nature, which is, no, what's in it for me? Like,
yeah,
how am I going to be taken care of out of this? Which is like the last question we should ever ask, when we're in. But that's definitely a concern that you need to have when you're out. Like, okay, I need to get paid too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think we have a hard time.
Yeah, that have a hard time, like kind of what you talked about. Like I see a lot of veterans get taken advantage of it because they don't see their value in their work,
And they
because
will.
they want to be a team player,
Yeah.
right? Which is a great character trait to have, until people start taking advantage of you, right?
And
there's
people will take advantage
will
of
take
it.
advantage of it for it because
Yeah.
that, and then like you look at things as kind of like what we said is like, I'm looking at you as a person. I don't care what you own. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that's what success looks like. I'm like, Eddie's a solid guy. You know what I mean? He's got these character traits. This is this. I don't care if you drive a Civic or you drive a Bugatti. I don't
Yeah,
care.
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make a difference to me,
Who are you as a person?
Who are you as a person? In the civilian world, nobody gives a shit about that.
No.
They don't. It's about what you have, what you can do for me, And that's a whole different kind of like trying to understand that has been.
But I think that's, and you know what, and I agree with you 100%. But I think that's like on us, coming from our backgrounds. That's on us to show them like, hey, this is what really does matter.
Yeah.
At the end, because all of us have different stories from our past jobs, different traumas we've been through, and I think that's the one gift of going through all that is we know what really matters in life.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been at the bottom and then you've managed to claw your way back up. It's like, I know what matters, and it's not how much money you have. It's not what you're wearing, what you're driving, or anything like that. It's how are you inside feeling? Do you have $1 million, or do you feel like $1 million?
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, me feeling like $1 million is I'm straight with God. I have a great home life. My family's taken care of. I don't need much, but I have enough to sustain, and that my wife and kids are happy. I'm like, that to me is success all day long. Everything else is just gravy on top,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more on that one.
Well, brother, dude, it was awesome having you on, man. And where can people find you on?
So right now, on my socials, I have on Instagram right now. It's just under my
Okay.
name, terry.m.wilson.jr.
All right, we're gonna put that below as well. And then, dude, you have an incredible story. We didn't even cover half like your deployment stuff. 'Cause I know you have like a million stories from that, but I really appreciate you talking about, obviously what happened at the end of your career, and I know how hard that has to be. But I do think that people will get a lot from it, and just hearing your story and then everything what you and your family went through, and that you guys are still pushing forward today. I think that's going to serve as a beacon of light for a lot of people that are listening, for sure.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. So
Yeah,
had a
brother.
good time.
And then hopefully, yeah, we'll hang out some more for sure.
Yeah. Maybe see you on Monday.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are. Yeah, we'll be
Yep.
with Chad Monday for sure.
Yep.
That'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. So,
All right, man. Out. Hey, what's up, guys? So, as you know, when I'm not podcasting, I'm doing a lot of instructing shooting courses, whether it's from basic to advanced. And the one product I'd love to see people bring to the range is a suppressor for obvious reasons, because when you shoot, you want to shoot like a gentleman. And over the course of my career, and also while instructing, I have got to shoot a multitude of different suppressors, and there's only one that I really love that I stick with, and that is elevated silence. I've been shooting that now for over a couple years. There is very little to no blowback. It's definitely one of the quietest suppressors out there, and believe me, I put it to the test. They are made to last. So whether you're a seasoned shooter or new to the game, Elevated Silence has a suppressor to match your needs. Their commitment to quality ensures that each product enhances your shooting sessions, making them more enjoyable and memorable. If you are looking to pick up a suppressor, go to elevatedsilence.com. Thank you, and God bless.